Okay, so we're talking about acceleration. One way to look at acceleration is to think about two cars who have a drag race. Okay, I think there's a video of this in the PowerPoint. Maybe it's a McLaren F1 versus a Bugatti Veyron, I think. But let's think about two cars. Let's think about a McLaren, the McLaren F1 that you saw on that video, okay? One of the greatest cars ever made, my favourite car when I was young. And this McLaren F1 can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3.2 seconds, okay? Then let's say we've got a Toyota Corolla. Okay, my first car, Toyota Corolla. Spell that correctly. Okay, and let's say that this goes from 0 to 60 in, it's probably longer than this, but let's say 15 seconds, okay? Which one's got the better acceleration? Well, obviously, it's the McLaren F1. It can reach 60 miles per hour in a much smaller time. And that's what acceleration is all about. Okay, acceleration is the rate at which the velocity of an object changes. So this McLaren F1 can increase its velocity in a much smaller time, or it can increase its velocity from 0 to 60 miles per hour in a much smaller time than the Toyota Corolla, so it's got a higher acceleration. Acceleration tells us how quickly an object can change its velocity. So if you look at two other examples here, let's say we've got some object A that has an acceleration of 2 meters per second squared, and an object B that has an acceleration of 4 meters per second squared. Well, what does this mean? We measure acceleration in meters per second squared. What does it mean? Well, it means that this object can increase its velocity by 2 meters per second every second, okay? Because another way of writing 2 meters per second squared is 2 meters per second, okay? So this object can increase its velocity by 2 meters per second every second. 2 meters per second every second. This object can increase its velocity by 4 meters per second every second. So 4 meters per second every second. So this object has a greater acceleration because it can increase its velocity more per second, or in each second. Okay, and that's what acceleration is all about. That's what we mean by acceleration. Okay, and that leads us on to the equation for acceleration. Acceleration can be measured by calculating the change in velocity and dividing this by the time taken. Okay, and it's measured in meters per second squared. Okay, and another way of writing that will be A equals delta V over T, where delta V stands for change in velocity. Okay. All right. Now, to work out the change in velocity, you need to know two things. You need to know the initial velocity of the object, and you need to know the final velocity. Okay, and the change in velocity then, delta V, this delta V is equal to the final velocity minus the initial velocity. Okay, really important to know that. So there's some thoughts on acceleration.